Senator, for the 60-day notice, there's actually been law on the books for decades now that health plans and insurers have to give 60-day advance notice to purchasers, large purchasers, so some of our trust funds, before, and all purchasers, before they increase our premiums. And so that usually kicks off, in some cases, a negotiation over that rate. And so we took that same model, and basically put it onto prescription, to drug manufacturers. We had a sponsored bill last year, which was SB 546, which added to the notification that health plans and insurers had to give us as purchasers, because we felt like we needed some more information to be able to negotiate and prepare. And so that's the same model.
Okay, I'm trying to understand the opposition's concerns. And is it the scope of the bill? Is it the type of information that's being requested?
Senator Wolk, for the generics only, I can't speak for the other manufacturers. Generic manufacturers do not know 60 days ahead, 30 days ahead, what the prices are going to be. They probably don't know 1 week ahead, and in some cases 1 day ahead. So, and secondly, so they can't anticipate it, so they would not be able to comply and would bear penalties. So for the multi-source manufacturers of generic products, they have a compliance problem with the premise of reporting in advance. Secondly, in the annual reports, if every time their prices increase by 10%, they have to participate in a report, I think that the annual report would consist of nothing but generic manufacturers lined up to provide reports for costs that increased 10% or more, when at the same day, their costs may have decreased 10% or more. So there's a uniqueness to their market that makes it, from their perspective, impossible to comply with in a meaningful way to get at what the senator is trying to get at.
All right. I have a lot of faith in our senator. I've watched him act on a lot of complex bills. So I'm going to support the effort to move this forward, but I really do reserve the right not to support it on the floor. I'm not sure we get at the problem with this bill. I'm just not sure. So
I hear you.
Okay.
And I will, in my close, try to address your concerns and the process and what we've gone through.
Thank you.
Senator Mitchell?
Thank you. Two questions, sir. I heard loud and clear your example around insulin, and over 50 some odd years, the price has continued to go up. The question is, does your bill allow for the reporting of the opposite? The cost of drugs go down, theoretically, with generics in the market. And so would your bill allow for both reporting options if the price goes up and down?
I don't believe it does, but I mean, if that's an option and you want to highlight that.
No, it was a question. I'm trying to understand.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of it. But it's good. I appreciate the comment. Yeah.
Just a thought. Secondly, I'm getting back to the wholesale. I'm trying to get a sense if it's an apples to apples comparison or not. And the notion of capturing the wholesale price versus the reality of the benefit of discounts and rebates. And so in your mind, is it an apples to apples comparison, or as close as we can reasonably get?
Well, the difficulty is that we have with the average wholesale price and what the actual net price is, that we don't know what that is because there's a negotiation going on. Mm-hmm. So, and I kind of use the analogy of my mom shopping at Macy's, mm-hmm. and there's always a sale going on at Macy's, but at the end of the day, she still pays this amount of money for whatever she purchases. Mm-hmm. So what we want to get to is to find out what that cost is. What is that cost to the healthcare system, and is it going up, and why is it going up? Is it a new drug that's significantly higher? Okay, let's have the conversation about, is it beneficial? Is it an existing drug like the one for the aid in dying, and is it going up, and why? Is it going up purely for profit? Then we need to have a conversation because it should be about for the public good. That's kind of where, that makes a little sense.
I'm clear about the motivation, but the bill also has a stick in that while we're in the need-to-know business to get a sense of what the motivating factors are for the price increases, there's also a stick that says, even though we're gathering this information, you will be penalized, for lack of a better
I don't
word.
think there's any stick in this bill.
Okay.
There's not a,
Okay.
yeah, but there's no,
So the penalties
there's no penalty for
for,
prices going up.
got it. It's
They
just
can
a failure
raise
to report.
whatever- I mean, this
Got it.
this is an open market.
Right.
We're not penalizing, we're not regulating the price. What we want to look at is where are the cost drivers and why?
And so the stick is, if you don't report, then.
Only if you don't report.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I have a few questions. Any other questions before I ask my questions? Okay, thank you. We keep on hearing the 60 days, the confidentiality of the company's information, prices going up, and then also potentially that, if it's out there publicly that the prices can go up, somebody who is maybe a billionaire can go in and just buy a lot of drugs and completely run it out of supplies as well. Can you kind of, to the farmer, can you kind of expand a little on the impact of the required disclosure? And I'm also hearing the impact of potentially federal antitrust law. And are these information considered a trade secret? And how would this impact the 60 days in terms of competitiveness with the biopharma industry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a lot of questions there, but I really believe the author has no intention of running afoul with proprietary information or federal law, but there at least appears to be an emerging disagreement over how one reads the 60-day requirement under the FDA. The way we're being informed is drug companies are not able to provide any information to anybody unless it's scientifically based information about the effectiveness of the drug and so on, until the drug has been approved by the FDA. And the way the bill reads is we would have to give a 60-day notice in advance of that drug being approved and the price of that drug. So I think there's some more work we have to do to get square on what the law really means and what the interplay would be with California. And again, on proprietary information, what we talked about earlier is that we want to make darn sure if anything is reported that is sensitive, company-specific or drug-specific information, it has to be protected from disclosure to the general public. What's envisioned on the health plan reports are in the aggregate, not company by company, but we're concerned about inappropriate or incorrectly disclosing information that's proprietary or very sensitive. Because, it's a competitive business out there, and I know in issues like clinical trials, for example, if too much information is released, competitors will reverse engineer what that is and figure out what their competitors are doing. So this is an area that we must tread lightly on and very carefully.
I'd just add, in asking to justify prices, the bill calls for a lot of information that's long been held to be proprietary information. Research, successful and unsuccessful research, business information like, suppliers and marketing plans, business plans, manufacturing plans. All of those things have been held to be proprietary information, and that's part of the justification process as I read the bill, which will then be part of a public hearing where we're asked to justify our prices. So the bill clearly seems to tread on proprietary or trade secret information that we need to be mindful of.
With that, Mr. Chairman, as mentioned, the supporting documents, it's your bill. is what he's stating is what the information you want in terms of reporting? Would those meet the criteria for justifying a price increase? And the public hearing, would that also review all of the information, such as their marketing plan and et cetera? Because, you know, even with us as senators, we try not to show everybody our entire plan for the year, what events and everything we're going to do, right? You know, and so we just don't want to show everything that we have as well, because we don't want to give someone an advantage to preempt us either.
But let me reiterate what Mr. Notworth said. I have absolutely no intention, and I made it very clear to them, that I want to have any proprietary information from any company out in the public. I am the biggest believer in being an entrepreneur and allow companies to profit. However, what I'm saying is, and maybe it's in the way we wrote the language, but what I'm saying is that if you are going to raise your prices a significant amount within the mid-year, to notify the purchasers so they can get prepared, and then provide information as to why that is. If you can justify the increase, then yes, but there's no penalty for increasing it. But if, again, going to an example of an existing drug that's been increased 500%, but it doesn't cause anything that would increase the likelihood of people living longer or better outcomes, then we need to know that. And so it's just to gather that information. I am not here to get proprietary information from any of the businesses. And I've told them that numerous times. Perhaps maybe the sponsor would like to respond to that as well.
Madam Chair, if I may, just to clarify as well, the notification and the justification that the pharmaceutical companies are asked to give, this goes to purchasers. So CalPERS, hopefully pharmacy benefit managers, health plans, they're going to get this information. When you talk about the public meeting and the information that's going to be posted on the website by the regulators, that is only information that the health plans and the insurers report as part of their existing rate filings. So that information is not part of the public hearing, and it is not part of what is posted on the website. To be clear, there's two different sections. And the information that we're asking for in the justification, a lot of this is in the SEC filings that these companies have to do. They have to do lengthy explanations to their investors and shareholders about their lawsuits, about manufacturing, about their taxes, it's a long range of filing of information that they put in their 10Ks. And so a lot of what they're giving to shareholders and investors to justify how they're doing as a business, who they're acquiring, whether they're making money or losing money on a drug, all of that goes to investors. They have investor calls where a lot of this information is discussed, where they say on calls, we're raising the price because we have an opportunity to raise a price because another company went out of business. And that was a CEO from Lanet, is what he said on an investor call when they raised the price of a heart medicine drug 1,000%. So that's part of what we want. We want to know, are you coming out with a drug that is going to cure hepatitis C? Or is this an existing drug where you only have one competitor and you have the opportunity to raise it? Or other information. I mean, Dr. Pan had the point about drug shortages. The FDA has a list of drugs that are basically in shortage. Maybe that's the reason. And you can point to the FDA and say, look, we're on this list. You know, there's a lot of demand. So that's the kind of information that as purchasers we want to have so we can make informed decisions.
Could I just respond quickly to that?
Sure, real quick.
It says the legislature shall conduct an annual public hearing regarding the price increases and information reported pursuant to this section. And this section is all of the information that the drug manufacturers need to produce, as I read it, including a justification for the proposed price increase, expected marketing budgets, et cetera, et cetera. That's all been held to be clearly proprietary information. It would be company specific, and it is in the section where the drug manufacturers appear to be required to respond. So I would just respectfully disagree and say this is an issue, and we need to
Mr. Chairman, I'm confused now, because I just heard the legislature is going to do the hearing, and you just mentioned the sponsor.
Sorry, I was talking to a different section. There's a section where there's a public meeting that's part of the regulators.
Okay.
So a regulator has this information and goes through, it's part of the rate filing where a regulator reviews. This is just information, the information the drug companies do will be at a legislative hearing.
So there is, though, a legislative hearing that includes all this information then? Okay. I've got just a few more questions. I just wanted us to touch on, the research and development. In the biopharma, do you see an impact on this, and whether other states with strong R&D hubs will benefit from the additional requirements imposed by this bill or not?
Well, I think the concern would be that this points, or at least the information that's being collected just points to prices and costs, and it doesn't point to the overall benefit of biotechnology and the overall benefit of innovation. And I think there will be concerns that we spend all of our efforts and time in looking at what those, what prices are, and not looking at the value associated with that. And does it offset hospital costs? What's the overall value to the entire healthcare system? So we would be concerned. We would like to work with the senator, and we have appreciated his outreach to us. But our overall concern with this bill is that it could hamper biotechnology innovation.
You touch on a little bit of the complying with the cost of complying. Do you know maybe approximate what that would be in complying for each of potentially the drugs and the documents and information that you would have to provide and the time spent to do so?
I do not have that right now. We could try to generate that information for you, but no, I can't talk to that right now.
It's just more of curiosity, because I just don't want us to hamper our research and development. It's been such a great benefit to the state, especially when, there are life-saving, and it also, there's thousands and thousands of jobs, and not only just to the companies, but to all of our universities as well. And so I just don't want to hamper that effort. And with that, any other, Senator Pan?
So just one and I understand the notifications triggered by a justifications triggered by a 10% increase in the wholesale acquisition cost. Correct. So that's not actually necessarily the cost that is being paid by the health plan or the pharmacy benefit, and perhaps we can clarify, because I guess the concern is that are we actually creating, questions like, well, I guess what percentage of people actually pay the wholesale acquisition cost versus some other price? And so is this the notification, how does that tie to essentially what happens in reality versus what's happening in a construct of the pricing? So perhaps you can clarify how the wholesale acquisition price is determined and how much that reflects what is actually spent on the drug. And I see.
Dr. Pan, if I could, Teresa Stark with Kaiser Permanente. I'm sorry that I can't look at you. I do want to comment on the wholesale acquisition cost. It certainly is the starting point, right? And health plans and purchasers we are good negotiators. We do try hard to drive a good bargain and get a good discount on behalf of our members to help affordability and help to be able to sustain the cost of these medications. But I don't think we should dismiss it as, oh, nobody pays that. It's not important, because that's where they start. They start at that list price for a reason. They factor in a lot of things when they decide what to price a drug and whether or not to increase that drug. If you haven't looked at the congressional investigation of Gilead and how they decided to price the hepatitis C drugs, you should, because it's very informative, and that they know that nobody's going to pay that wholesale acquisition cost, that there are going to be discounts and rebates, so they factor that in. So it is important that there are different prices that health plans pay, but I don't want to dismiss the list price because it is where they start, and I think there should be more attention and more transparency paid to that price and why they start there. And frankly, even if a drug is 1,000% overpriced to begin with, a 50% discount doesn't make a whole lot of difference for payers and for consumers.
appreciate the explanation. I guess my concern would be, in terms of transparency, is that, that number is actually highly manipulable, right? And in fact, so we've now just created another factor for the company to decide on what they want to set the price. They may decide that, let's set it really high right now because we'll just take the hit now, right? And then we'll just leave it there, right? So therefore, we don't have to then bring it up again. And we'll let the plan negotiate a really low rate, and then we won't negotiate quite as low over the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, just, again, that's, on one hand, we have a discussion about why one set, the MSRP on a car. I mean, we'll see how many people are the rate that the hotel puts up or something like that. But again, given the fact that this bill really is about, and I know you're trying to get to transparency, is that something that actually is an accurate reflection of what's going on, or is that going to give people a false sense of what's, in terms of accurate information about what's going on with the price? Because someone may be actually lulled into complacency, thinking, oh, the prices, nothing's changed. But actually, what's really happening, there is a change going on underneath. They just decided to set it up really high from the start, right? Or the other way around. I don't know. There's different ways people can go about doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to your point, Senator Pan, again, uniquely for generics, the wholesale acquisition cost for a drug can vary if it's sold in 100 pill.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Chair, I think we've exhausted the conversation here. Can we just move on? We've exhausted the conversation. We're being redundant in our questions at this point, I think. I'll call the question. I'll move the bill.
Wrap it up real quick.
He's called for the question. Call for the question, Robert's rules. We have to, if he called for the question, we have to vote.
I was told I don't have to accept the call for a question.
Well, I'm done with my questions.
Okay. Is there a motion? Mr. Chairman, would you like to close?
Yeah, I'd like to first start off by a comment that Senator Woke made. And I, first of all, appreciate your confidence in me with regard to this issue. But more importantly, the comment you made about I take on some very big and controversial issues. But I'd also like to mention that earlier in the hearing, she came up to me and says, did you come up with a compromise on this bill? I go, no, I'm working on it. So let's first start off with what I've done. I've had an open and transparent stakeholder process from the absolute beginning to let them know what our intentions are, but more importantly, to see if we can come to some kind of resolution. I will admit the bill has some problems, but I am willing to address those problems. The first one I'll admit is the generic industry. We need to look at that. It is unique. It is unique, okay? Then we will look and address, but I guess the question I have for the opposition, is the opposition prepared to actually have a dialogue and have that conversation? And if they are, let's do it. Here's the reason why I think it's important that we have this conversation. We have passed the absolute most transformative piece of healthcare legislation this country has ever seen. And there are some specific statutes put into federal law and state law that we all have to abide by. Health plans have some of the most onerous reporting requirements. They can't raise prices. They have to address to all their regulatory agencies, et cetera. But we also have what's called a medical loss ratio, that they cannot generate a profit after a certain amount. That's the law. Providers, we hear constantly over and over again how providers, we need to increase Medi-Cal reimbursement rates. Well, guess what? The reality of healthcare in this country is providers are going to have to see more patients at a lower price point and be more efficient. Here's the final thing that we have to deal with in our healthcare system. We are now mandating that everybody purchase health insurance. I am not an advocate to price regulation, to regulate prices. We have an open market system and we need to let it play out. Yes, if they want to generate a revenue or a profit, let them generate a profit. But at some point, we as elected officials have to be responsible to our constituents, because if we're going to mandate that they buy health insurance, everyone else is required to, at some extent, to lower their costs. We need to ask this question and have transparency in the market when it comes to prescription drugs. So let's talk a little bit about R&D. Yes, we have some drugs that are incredible new life-saving drugs. And yes, if it has an overall benefit to the health and society, then let's have that conversation. And if it's worth it, let's pay for that. But the concern I have is when the market is manipulated to generate a profit on the backs of the consumer and the taxpayers. And just short of having regulated prices, I believe that by having transparency, you're going to be able to address those concerns, okay? So let's talk a little bit about R&D. A lot of these companies get a lot of R&D from our university systems. Yes, I understand that a small percentage of their companies go to R&D and they get a product and they don't make money on it, but I will tell you, there's a lot of companies that make an awful lot of money, and you can see that very clearly in the advertising that you see in the medications on television every single day. So, yes, this is a very difficult bill that we're moving forward, but I really believe that we need to have transparency in this area so that the consumer, the buyer of this product, government, knows what they're paying for. And I am willing to have that conversation with the opposition, so I guess I will ask them someday, are they really willing to have that conversation with me? And with that, members, I respectfully ask for an aye vote. There was a motion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a motion, and this is due pass to appropriations. Madam?
Hernandez.
Aye.
Hernandez, aye. Nguyen.
No.
Nguyen, no. Hall. Hall, aye. Mitchell. Mitchell, aye. Monning. Monning, aye. Nielsen. Nielsen, no. Pan. Pan, aye. Roth. Roth, aye. Wolk. Wolk, aye.
7-2, and it passes.